With back-to-back seasons with 50 wins with this group, with Ja Morant now entering a 25-game suspension and Dillon Brooks set to be leaving the Grizzlies after they come out and say they are not re-signing him under any circumstances, the Grizzlies are going to have an interesting offseason and an interesting start to the beginning of next season. Desmond Bane will be extension eligible, so they have a chance to lock up a few members of their core this summer, but they're going to have to make a decision around who is the Dillon Brooks replacement, as even though there is some controversy around his play and his comments in the media over the last 6 months, he still is a valuable piece of this team and will be a guy they have to look to replace as they enter the summer. I'll get your thoughts first, Steph. What do you see moving forward from this Grizzlies team in the offseason?
Well, I mean, first off, we got to talk about the Ja suspension because, of course, 25 games. I won't say it's too much. A lot of us were expecting half of the year. That's what a lot of the reports were. But what I can say about this Grizzlies team is that we've seen them be pretty successful without Ja on this team. So 25 games isn't too much into the season. Just make sure you start off hot, or maybe even not start off hot. Just make sure you at least stay above 500, stay above water, so that when Ja does get back, y'all can just hit the ground running and go. But like I said, they've already shown that they're a team that has done well without him. They're pretty cohesive. Now, when it comes to Dillon Brooks, you do have to replace him with regards to his defensive ability. And I won't say his three-point shooting as of lately. More so in the beginning of his career, he was a better three-point shooter, but he is still a formidable shooter, formidable player. In terms of that, there are some guys that I've considered that they could get, guys like Caris LeVert. He averaged 15 points per game, 5 assists. That actually helps a little bit more than Dillon Brooks, because Dillon Brooks is more of a stand-and-shoot kind of guy, whereas Caris LeVert, he could do that while also creating his own shot here and there. He's improved his defense a little bit, but he's still pretty average. He's not really needle shifting, so they are lacking there. Now, if you want a guy that's more of a Dillon Brooks kind of role, you go with Jay Crowder. Jay Crowder pretty much in limbo. We don't know what's going to happen with him. We don't know where he's going to go. He didn't really get the playing time with the Bucks like we expected, and we already know he's a solid 3-and-D guy, but the most important part of getting a guy like Jay Crowder, they have a vet now. Now, Steven Adams is their vet, but Jay Crowder is a hard-nosed vet, a vet that has been in some of the better locker rooms that we've seen and been on contending teams. So he would bring a very good presence with regard to that. And lastly, a guy that I don't really think I've heard too much about, but Harrison Barnes. He's a free agent this coming free agency. Of course, he has championship pedigree. I kind of question his vocal leadership. He seems like a guy that's more of a lead by example. And like I said with Jay Crowder, this team needs a vet to really help them and make sure they stay the course. Because though Steven Adams is a vet, he hasn't really done anything in this league for those young guys to truly, truly listen to him. Harrison Barnes, he did shoot 37% from three. And in the last 5 seasons, he's averaged 14.5 points per game. And for context with regards to his three-point shooting, his lowest three-point shooting year in those last 5 seasons would have made him the 3rd best shooter on the Grizzlies today. So regardless, he could help the Grizzlies. He would be a guy that truly, gives them an edge. And not for nothing, they have a young guy in Kenny Lofton that I think he's a bucket. I'm really high on him. I really like him. He's going to need to figure out the defensive end because he's a little bit heavier in the ass than most people at his size are. Therefore, he's pretty slow and he don't really defend too well. And the guys that he tries to defend or does defend, they tend to be bigs, but he's a 6'6", 6'5" kind of guy. So you're not really expecting him to be on those guys. However, I do expect him to develop. Xavier Tillman, great rotational piece. After Brandon Clarke went down, he is going to come back as well. Brandon Clarke, that is. So this team, I don't see them adding too many pieces other than one piece to, try to quote unquote replace Dillon Brooks. And I think the 3 guys that I listed, they're pretty good with regards to helping the shooting side of the ball because defensively, I'm not too worried about that, even though Dillon Brooks was their main defender.
Yeah, man. I mean, the Grizzlies, right? I mean, T kicked it off by talking about Ja Morant and his situation. That's got to be, first top of mind. I'm maybe some people might call me harsh on it, but I actually think Adam Silver should have really just laid the hammer, lay the hammer on him and give him the whole year. Give him the but pause though, and give him the whole year. And here's why I say give him the whole year. Right, Ja Morant. Not only is he like the athlete the kids are looking to and whatnot, but he's also could be something that the face of the league. He could be the face of the league years down the line, and he could be the face of the league years down the line. And in my opinion, I really believe in that saying, whatever the top of the snake will do, the rest of the body will follow. And if you're allowing, Ja Morant, the top player of the league, the head of the league, to be able to be acting this way, to be able to
that shit was a bar, nigga. I'm sorry, that was a bar.
Which part was a bar?
That was a bar. You said something about the snake head, it follows whatever. That shit was a bar.
Yeah, good looking. But anyway, all I'm saying is if Adam Silver's allowing top players in the league to be able to do this, what is this going to show to other players in the league, players that are coming into the league years down the line, okay, I could do this or I could do that, and maybe I could get away with it. In my opinion, Adam Silver should have just laid the low down on him, use Ja Morant as an example, be like, yo, you guys want to play with me? You guys want to think that, listening to NBA YoungBoy doing all this other shit, that's your personal life. Keep that in your personal life. Don't let that intervene a business, because at the end of the day, NBA business, and that's what Adam Silver and all these NBA executives are thinking on. Now, as far as the team rise and what's going to happen with the Memphis Grizzlies, I mean, Trill brought it up. He talked about the fact that they have Tyus Jones, and arguably the best backup point guard in the NBA right now. Every single year, him and his brother constantly lead the league in an assist to turnover ratio. So they're good point guards to be able to keep the team afloat while Ja Morant's out. And like how TB mentioned, 25 games isn't something, isn't an insurmountable deficit that you can't come back from. Now, for some free agent targets that I think they should target, T look like T stole my list, because he had a couple of players that I had. But the only other player that I'd add in there that I think would be a magnificent add and a replacement and an upgrade to Dillon Brooks is Josh Hart. I mean, he could defensively be a dog too, and he's also a free agent this season. And he would be an offensive upgrade in almost every category to Dillon Brooks. So if they could land possibly, Josh Hart, Jay Crowder, some of these players, some of the more of the 3-and-D. But as far as their team needs, it's not really much. They got their stars, they got their vets, they got their shooters, they got their backup guards. They really just need to figure out a defensive dog to pick players up full court. That's a Josh Hart or Jay Crowder right there in your hands.
Yeah, I do think it's very, very far from panic time in Memphis. I think just overall, they're going to be perfectly fine. When it comes to the Ja suspension, I do think it's a significant enough punishment, mostly because of the new 65-game rule for the all-NBA teams and end-of-season awards and things like that. He's instantly just mathematically ineligible for all of that. And before
you keep going, keep in mind they do have the appeal. I don't know if this would be something that Ja Morant would be able to appeal, but I mean, getting handed a 25-game suspension, assuming he plays the rest of them, that's what 82 minus 25. That's 57 games. Maybe they might let him in. Maybe they might slide him in for the All NBA talks. Maybe not. Just a possibility.
I feel like they wouldn't, just to enforce the punishment as hard as possible.
Yeah, probably not. But something that could happen.
Just most likely the fact that they're saying, "Hey, yeah, Ja, you did this, and next year you're not going to get to participate in All-Star Weekend. You're not making the All-NBA team." And I know it's not a contract here, but All-NBA selections is something that's messed with contracts in the past. So overall, it's not like it takes him out for the entire season as a guy that's super marketable and that the league really wants to promote. But it does strip away some things from him and does take away some opportunities that are very far from insignificant. At the same time, we've seen this team win so many games without Ja Morant. I know the stat, the very first year they were good, they were 20-2 without him or something crazy. To me, as long as Jaren Jackson's there, I think they're fine. We saw last season the way their defense flipped completely overnight once he came back into the lineup from his injury to start the season. If he's there, I know the defensive end of the ball is going to be pretty okay. Plus, with Tyus Jones, Desmond Bane, other guys running the offense, I think they'll have enough to win a lot of games. I wouldn't be surprised if they were over 500 by more than a few games by the time Ja came back. Not saying they're going to be like top of the West good, but I do think they'll be very much in it, like probably like a 4 to 6 range. That would not surprise me at all. As it comes to replacing Dillon Brooks, even if they don't get anybody major, I think the addition by subtraction of his shot selection in moments and just a lot of the negatives he brings, painting a target on their back, really making people want to go after them, I think it's fine. However, the guys that you guys have been bringing up, and especially the Jay Crowder nod, really good nod there. Not that I was even thinking of him personally, but hearing you mention that, I really do like the fit. I think having a veteran for a team that does have some of these off-the-court issues and some of these youth issues like what Ja's going through now, it's a really good fit in a non-ball context and in the ball context, just having a 3-and-D guy on the court that can slide in really easily. This team really just feels like they've been good for a couple years, and next year maybe they can put it all together and really make that deep run. We'll just have to see. But for the offseason concerns, it's just going to be really minor for them. I mean, when everybody's coming back for next year pretty much, there's not a ton to do. So, yeah, as long as they get that 3-and-D guy, I think they're looking just fine to try and compete again next season and get out of the West.
As far as the suspension goes, I think 25 is probably the perfect punishment, if I'm being honest. Definitely wouldn't want to see him get a significant suspension because of circumstances, which I'm not going to get into. I have my opinions on that. But 25 seems about right. Disincentive, or what am I trying to say? He's basically disqualified from All-NBA that has contract implications, All-Star that has contract implications, stuff like that as well. Probably not going to win any, end of season awards because of lack of games played, all that. So, I mean, I guess it's unfortunate for Ja, but you live with the decisions you made and you keep moving forward. So that's what he's going to have to do. I feel like Adam Silver was, in my opinion, probably even more lenient. He didn't have anything to do with the original suspension. That was team oriented, but I feel like Adam Silver was a little more lenient than I would have expected him to be. And just because it is one of the future faces, not even he's one of the faces of the league, currently. Definitely don't think he wanted to miss out on all of those, social media engagements and just all the attention, and noise surrounding his name. So, yeah, unfortunate that he's going to have to sit through that, but that's just the way shit goes. As far as free agency pickups, I don't know how interested they'd be in this because they would be tying up a good amount of money with this acquisition, but haven't heard anybody say OG Anunoby. They just lost Dillon Brooks. If he was in a contract year, he definitely would make more than what Dillon was making, but it probably wouldn't be so significant that they wouldn't be able to, slot him in on the roster. Obviously, he'd be a great fit. Offensively, he does more than Dillon Brooks did in regards to not shot chucking and just being super inefficient anyway. He's a better shooter, probably a better defender as well. Just somebody that I think that could definitely help out this Grizzlies team, especially knowing that they're going to be 25 games without their best player. Yeah, that's basically all I have for the Grizzlies. Just like y'all have said, got to keep their head above water for the 25 games that Ja Morant is out. I don't think that'll be a problem because we've seen how good they have been without Ja Morant. And a proper, free agency with even minor moves could have a major effect on this team next season. And I think that you want to start off as strong as you can because obviously, you're not coming into the season at full strength. But yeah, definitely want to make 1-2 small or maybe one medium-sized free agency move. Call it a day because you don't want to tinker too much with this team. I think you got something good with the core of Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Desmond Bane. All the ancillary pieces, you can figure those out down the road. But if you could get one of them this offseason, that'd be great. If not, that's all right too, because you still have time with this group.
Yeah, I think there are a few things that you guys said that I kind of want to touch more on, and even a few things that I think you guys didn't really touch on. So I think first of all, with Desmond Bane, who is extension eligible, I feel like that should be a no-brainer that they take care of business with that. Obviously the biggest headline on this team that has many headlines ever since they got eliminated is probably, just Ja Morant with the suspension and everything like that. And it's so like this, it still is huge, right? I feel like, if this happened 1 year later, this would have been like 100 times more intriguing for the simple fact of he signed his extension last year. So the Grizzlies, if they saw this, if he got a 25-game suspension after an 8-game suspension last year, and then this is the year that he was extension eligible, it would be really interesting to see how they handle him and Tyus Jones, because I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how, if he's going to miss 25 games and then they bring him back and he's with the team for half the year, let's say it doesn't work out, they don't win a championship. I don't know what's going to happen with, Tyus Jones necessarily. Maybe he gets kind of like the feeling that I guess like Terry Rozier got a couple years ago with Boston, where it almost felt like, what's my role here? I want something bigger. I feel like I've earned something bigger. Because if we think about Tyus Jones, like ever since 2020, last 3 years, they're 37-17 when he starts. Last 2 years, they're 32-13 when he starts. I know that's not all him, but you got to give him a lot of credit. He's one of the best in the league in terms of like assist to turnover ratio. So I think personally for me, you don't want to just completely lose something good there, and then you're investing in Ja Morant. Of course, you're going to invest in Ja Morant because he's your best player, but there is a risk that comes with that, and I think that's pretty well known at this point. But as for Dillon Brooks, I think coming in the offseason, there are maybe people that you could go after. I think you guys mentioned like Jay Crowder a little bit. I think one person I'm kind of looking at that maybe they could pick up for not too much, but I think the second half of this season like proved he could be valuable on an important team. And really it's kind of not so much of an important team, because at that point in the season they were by the end of it at least, like they had a lot of injuries and their season started to spiral down. But for most of the season, they were still an elite team in the Western Conference until everything spiraled downward. And that's the Pelicans, and I'm talking about Josh Richardson. I think Josh Richardson might be an interesting addition. I think he adds a lot defensively. He's not a bad catch and shoot shooting guard guy. And also, I don't think you're going to see from him as much as you saw from like Dillon Brooks necessarily, with like maybe forcing bad shots and trying to assert himself into the offense. I think he can be more selfless in that respect. So I think that could be an interesting addition if you want him as the starting two. And then if you ever want like more shooting, you still have Luke Kennard on contract that you could put him at the two. I think Josh Richardson would be, a great two guard though, that he could take like the primary ball handler in that assignment. There are a few other things maybe to consider, like with Brandon Clarke and his injury late in the season, like maybe, and it seems rough, and this is where it's like the NBA is a business, but there's probably potential that if they did want to make a trade for something bigger, they could trade him. I don't know. I don't expect they would, but I think that that's definitely not off the table. And it's also interesting to see like what's going to happen with Santi Aldama, because over the last 2 years, it almost feels like he kind of, hasn't really had too much hype over in the last 2 years. But if you really think about it, like he's gotten big minutes and he started a decent amount of games last year, like I think like 20 or 30. So he definitely has a role on this team. My biggest question is like sometimes, at least in Taylor Jenkins' system, it feels like he's not like comfortable enough. And maybe there's other scenarios out there that could maybe use his talents better. So I'm interested to see what they do with him. But I think like the most obvious thing that they should do at this point, given all the drama with Ja, all the drama with Dillon Brooks, I think they do have to extend Desmond Bane. I feel like that's the most obvious thing they should do. And try to do their best not to allow, like I said, a Terry Rozier situation to happen for Tyus Jones, because if something happens again to Ja next year and he gets like a serious punishment from the NBA, I mean, I was listening to something, I don't remember who it was, but they said like when it was the 8-game suspension and then the 25-game suspension. So it's like, all right, 2 strikes, 3 strikes, you're out. Essentially, like talking like baseball terms. So if this happens again, like he might not be in the NBA, or he's probably going to be off this team for sure. So if you're losing Tyus Jones and Ja Morant, that's going to be a lot to, you know, fill in that role, especially when you're losing Dillon Brooks. So I get it, not a huge loss. And like Gabe even said, it could be addition by subtraction. But, you know, this guy, you know, at some points he has shown up. He's not the player he used to be, where literally 2 years ago, and it doesn't even feel real, but this guy 2 years ago averaged like 26 points a game in a playoff series. You couldn't even believe that if someone told you that now. But I think and sometimes he can do a lot of great things for this team. Unfortunately, he's not going to be there, but I don't know. I think you just can't lose everything at your guard position on a team that I already feel like kind of lacks some playmaking. So that's just the way I see it. And those are the kind of the biggest things they need to target this summer and just moving forward really in general. So
I agree with that. I think that they're just it's going to be a lot of like the usual Memphis Grizzlies that I feel like that we saw like in the Tony Allen Zebo days. Like they're going to always have a pretty talented team, but they're not quite going to get over that hump, it doesn't seem. Y'all were speaking to the suspension. Let's also remember that on top of the 25 games, it's contingent upon him going to counseling as well. We know that he said he went to some retreat or counseling, whatever, the first time. But anybody that's really been to one of those retreats / counselings, whatever you want to call it, they keep you there for about 2, 3, 4 months, like for a minute. And he was back in like a week, 2 weeks. So either he capped or he went for a little bit and was like, I'm good off this, I could leave, whatever the case is. So, you know, we get to actually see if he's taking true accountability, because it's contingent upon that. If he doesn't go to counseling, this could be more than 25 games. So with that being said, that's going to be big as well, because we're going to need to see like where Ja is mentally, because as Garrett was saying, you can just stick with Trey Jones going forward and figure out what you're going to do with Ja after that. But I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't foresee that happening. And with that being said, though, Trey Jones is who he is, and he probably will play great basketball for those 25 games that he misses. Like you said, it's a business. And in business, wherever you're putting your largest investment, that's where you're going with, no matter who is playing better or not. So with that being said, I think Tyus, the writing's on the wall for him, unfortunately, because Ja got his payday. Tyus is not getting that kind of payday. I don't care what anybody says. So with that being said, he's probably more than likely going to, if he's not comfortable in the role he's in now and knowing that he could be a starter, but he's, you know, they're working towards something bigger, he could be out of there, like and it's something that could very easily happen. But before I give it to John, I also wanted to add, because I forgot to say this player, they could also go and get Kelly Oubre. I like that pickup for them as well. We talked about their lack of shooting, but we also talked about how it's kind of hard to replace what Dillon Brooks brought on the defensive end, and Kelly Oubre does bring that same intensity. They kind of play defense fairly similar, to where sometimes it seems like they're doing a lot and sometimes it seems like they're not doing too much. However, I think Kelly Oubre is a kind of guy where he would actually fit with this team. He would fit in terms of personality, character, and I think he would be the kind of guy that these younger guys would listen to, because though Kelly Oubre, he's, I guess you could say, out there in terms of how he looks, personality and stuff like that, painted nails, all that, whatever, I still feel like he's a pro's pro, meaning he's a very professional, very good basketball player, and that would be more of the guy that dudes like Ja Morant and them are going to listen to, because he's more of like, I guess you would say, the big homie, but not too old of the big homie. He's more like our age, mentoring the 18, 19, 20-year-olds. So I think that would be a guy that would actually be a pretty good fit for Memphis as well.
Not gonna lie to you, that's a great person to think of. I'm not gonna lie, Didn't even think of that. Yeah, I feel like he would definitely fit it. He 100% has that dog mentality. He be getting up, hitting them push-ups after, and you know what I'm saying. So yeah, he definitely fits the dog mentality that Dillon Brooks is, and even you could argue he's a better on the offensive end as well. Definitely was this past year, but that's situational. But what I want to ask y'all is Mo, you brought up a great point. You talked about bringing OG Anunoby, right, to replace Dillon Brooks, and I love that. I'm not gonna lie, that was a great name to think of. And I mean, he's much better than Dillon Brooks on both ends. I mean, I would take OG defensively, and I'll take him offensively. If you bring in OG, you put Brandon Clarke, who's a great backup, 4 / he could play the 5 sometimes. You put him on the bench, so that only makes your team deeper. But the only issue is
next year he's probably going to miss most of the year because of his torn Achilles.
Then there you go. but so then what I'm saying is the issue is OG still does have those 2 years left on his contract. So you would have to, make a trade for him if you're looking to get him this year. So what I was going to ask is like, who are some fits if you're the Grizzlies front office, who are some fits that you're willing to give up? Because now let's be honest, like I know that Dillon Brooks put a lot of pressure on them, and they ended up crumbling to the Lakers or whatnot. But this Grizzlies team is a good team. They got a lot of pieces together. Like they're, in my opinion, they're closer to a championship than they are to going and rebuilding. Like they're very far from a championship, but they're closer to that championship than they are to going and absolutely starting over. So at this point, do you risk some of these pieces that have clearly worked and got you here, and then try to bring a player like OG, or do you keep running with the core and go from there?
When you talk about OG and like trading for him, I think like money wise, I mean, I know he's very good at what he does, but if I'm thinking if the Raptors want to say yes to that, Tyus Jones only makes like $5 million less, and so you do like Tyus Jones and a guy who makes like $4 million ish, something like that.
Probably Tyus and Zaire.
Yeah, Tyus and Zaire, and like that's pretty similar money. And personally, as a Raptors fan, I keep saying the main thing we really need is playmaking. More than anything, we need playmaking. So, as a Raptors fan, I would be fine with Tyus and Zaire, assuming the Raptors go into more rebuild mode. Because I've been screaming this forever, if they were to trade Pascal for that number 3 pick and bring in Scoot, they trade for Tyus Jones, bring him in, get Zaire as another solid, still pretty young piece.
That's not happening.
An extra pick. A man can dream, bro. If they do OG for Tyus, a man can dream. Listen, I'm manifesting it. My biased Raptors fandom is showing right now. But I really would not be too upset at that outcome. Tyus Jones, because you got to give up something good.
I just attempted the trade and it doesn't work. However, OG Anunoby, I tried OG for Tyus and Zaire. That didn't work. And then I tried OG for Tyus and that doesn't work either. However, what does work and may be feasible, and I don't know how you feel as a Raptors fan, so of course let me know, but you could do a straight up trade for OG and Luke Kennard. I don't know how you feel about that because I don't know the quiet outlook in terms of your guys' shooting. It is nasty. It's disgusting. But it works. It does work.
I'm not gonna lie. 18. See, I was gonna try to justify the
Raptors. But you said the Raptors if they're going in full rebuild mode. So that's what I'm thinking in terms of that. Like you're shipping Anunoby out, who is a valuable piece, and Luke Kennard isn't really going to be a guy like you're looking to play winning basketball with. So that's more so where I'm going with that kind of trade.
Yeah, if you just want picks, if you just want picks, then it works because you can get Kennard and a couple picks. Kennard's got a team option after next year, so you can get off the salary within a year. But
exactly, that's where I was going with that. Not in terms of you're trying to win game.
It's still nasty.
I was trying to justify it at first, Trill. I'm not gonna lie. I was gonna. We don't need to be. But then I tried, and I was like, yeah.
But no, genuinely, like that's if you're going this. The caveat is if you're 100%. Going rebuild mode.
Yeah.
So you get Luke, you get 2-3 picks, and then you trade OG. Right. I don't see what's wrong with that.
And I agree. I agree. But if that's the best package for OG, I would be shocked.
Oh no,
Yeah.
I just did it all quick.
But yeah,
so,
with
yeah.
Memphis, for sure.
As
That
as
makes
as
sense.
a Raptors fan, bro, I would love to have Luke Kennard on my team, man. And
You are
it is-
crazy, man.
no,
this
and
is
listen,
the hometown
for OG?
bias coming in.
Come on.
bro, and it's only because, bro, me and Luke Kennard, we were born in the same city. So,
Wait, come on.
so
Next.
in that we were born
Next.
in the same building. It's very
Raptors
biased.
fan.
It is
This
biased,
guy,
but I
man.
would love to have Luke Kennard on my team.
Yeah, I
It
just
would
think,
still be-
I don't think
it's-
I've ever
it's-
heard anybody say that combination of words ever.
Yeah, bro. You've never met somebody from my hometown, bro. That's why.
I just think like too, and I know Anunoby would be a huge addition, but I kind of also I just don't know how that trade's gonna work necessarily. But I also think like they should try to do their best to maybe get like a true big man inside, because we're thinking about some of like their main bigs, like between Jaren Jackson Jr., who I think could play center, but he's also out on the perimeter a lot as maybe one of their best like perimeter defending big men, and also like on the offensive end as a 3-point shooter too, like pick and pop game. And then also like Steven Adams, he missed a decent chunk of this year, like with his injury history. Brandon Clarke's probably not going to be back until like later next year, and if at all. And then Xavier Tillman, who played nice for a couple games in the playoffs this year, but he's also a little bit undersized for a center, and that's kind of the same thing with Kenneth Lofton, who they usually play there. So like I'm just thinking like if they could get a guy, I mean, I'm trying to like look through the free agency pool. The centers aren't as strong. I know like maybe in terms of fit, like Naz Reid isn't quite what they're looking for, but I think in terms of culture, that's potential. Maybe the most like likely option for like another backup big, like a true center, would be like Bismack Biyombo. I think he could also fit their culture as well. I know he's a little bit older, but I don't know. I think like these are probably options from that perspective that they should consider as well. Because I mean, personally, for me, I just feel like when we saw him in the playoffs this year and a lot of times throughout the season, sometimes even though it doesn't show on like paper in terms of like their height, like sometimes they'll play like not as like big of a team necessarily that they should. And maybe that could help them out as well. You're muted.
You're muted.
He's so muted.
He said,
Last trade. You don't got to put this in the video or nothing. This is funny because you said a big, so I just said fuck it. Let me throw a big in there. Luke Kennard and Zaire Williams goes to the Raptors for OG and Christian Coloco.
There's no way, man. There's no way. I'm retiring as a Raptors fan if we trade away Coloco already.
Wait. No, you said for who?
I said Zaire and Kennard for OG and Coloco. Of course, the Raptors
Hey,
would be.
man.
Of course, the Raptors would get like 2 or 3 picks. But
That boy said Luke Kennard enjoy your work.
Nah, bro. Because listen. I'm still. Because here's the whole point about Luke Kennard is that you're not going to become a better team, bro.
Why are we making this case?
No, bro.
No.
Because you're not going to be a better team, bro. If
I'm
you
an agenda
trade-
starter, and I love
No,
it.
No, because hear me out, bro. Let there be some hearing out, bro. If you get worse through making that trade, and you also trade Pascal for pick number 3,
Can't trade your best
you
player.
just, bro.
This man needs to be stopped.
Bro,
It's outrageous.
I'm ready for the rebuild, man.
Do
Let us
not
be
let
bad.
him
Let
cook.
Scotty,
Do not
let
let him
Scotty, bro.
Stop it.
Scooty will feed nations.
Oh
bro.
my goodness, yeah.
We need to get this.
Scooty will
All right.
feed
This
nations.
guy is
This
stuck in La
man
La
is
Land
laughing
until
at
the
it.
draft is done.
This is fucking
All right,
hilarious.
key holder, step in, please. Key holder, please do something.
The man has been muted. He has been dealt with.
Get that terrorist out of here.
This is
crazy.
censorship, bro.
Absolutely. You don't get to voice that opinion. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can't do that one.
But Luke Kennard aside,
Uh,
the Grizzlies have much bigger fish to fry this offseason. There's no doubt about that. But hopefully they're able to manage the Ja Morant suspension. They can stay afloat through those first 25 games like the majority of us think they will. They can lock up Desmond Bane long term and hopefully continue to be a successful team in the Western Conference and maybe make a little bit more of a push in the postseason next year. But let us know down in the comments below how you think they will fare without Ja Morant in his first 25 games. And we'll see you guys in the next one.